Hey everyone, Avros here, back again with the Final Fantasy XII game challenge with Final Fantasy V, and just going through the party setup before we go to the fire-powered ships. So Avros is Blue Mage, off being the Thief, and equipped with some mithril gear there. Lena's changed to a Mystic Knight to take advantage of Spellblade, and using that two-handed, meaning she can't use a shield, but uses her sword with both hands to do increased damage. So she should be dishing out a lot with that. And next up, Galuf, still a white mage, getting some levels up with that so we can change him out. Equipped with the flail so he does extra damage from the back row. And lastly, Faris has been changed to a red mage to take advantage of that lovely red magic skill, and using barehanded from the monk to increase the damage with her mithril sword there, so she can still do some damage in melee to be effective with that as well. So, and from there we head to the fire-powered ship, and as we arrive, Sid's already here. And he complains it took us long enough. I guess it did when we made a detour to Castle Waltz, and so the engine is what's draining the fire crystal, so we need to shut off the engine in the fire-powered ship. So Sid leads us over to the way down. And you might be looking at this ship and going, it's made of wood, how is it fire-powered, and wouldn't that be dangerous, the wooden ship? So we head downstairs and, yep, all normal, looks like every other ship we've been on. World map there, and yep, wood. This looks like the underside of any ship we've been on so far, or wood, also normal. And then we get down to the lower decks, and it's all made out of metal and conveyor belts and machinery and everything there. So further in we find a set of Thief's Gloves here, so that's impetus to change Avros back to a Thief there. The Thief's Gloves severely increasing the steal rate on the steal ability, so using those, and towards the end of the ship we run into Queen Karnak right here at the engine at the bottom of the ship, and it's a weird purple glow, and calls us infidels and tells her that we'll pay for interfering with her revival, which is a weird thing to say. So this is the cue for our next boss fight here against the Liquid Flame. 3000 HP there, and 100 MP. Weak against ice, immune to poison and water, and absorbs fire and wind in this form. And we'll get to that in a moment, but has a lot of immunities and no real type there. But the Liquid Flame does like to change form, so here we can see it's hand form instead of humanoid form. They all drop different items when they're killed, but changes the immunity, so the hand is actually immune to ice. And still absorbs fire and wind. And lastly, the fire tornado there. All shares the same health pool, but it does just change forms throughout the fight, making this a bit more tricky. The tornado is still weak to ice, so that'll be our primary method of beating the Liquid Flame here. So, going into combat with it. You can see Avros is actually in the back row now. He's got the weapon there, the Moonring Blade, as he just threw, which allows him to attack from the back row for full damage, so actually increases his survivability quite a lot. Lena taking advantage of that Spellblade. This will be our first chance to actually see how that all works. So Faris access to all level 3 white and black magic as a red mage, and Galuf still got access to his level 3 black magic there, which is the highest we've got at this point, so able to use that Blizzara to get lots of damage on. And the Liquid Flame using Magnet there to change rows, so Galuf now on the front row, which we don't really want, so we'll do our best to move him back, I'm pretty sure, at this point in the fight to try and keep his survivability up. But Faris actually killed there, and Lena hitting for 1100 damage there with that Blizzara two-handed Spellblade. It does so much damage with two-handed with any of the Spellblades that it's actually incredibly potent at this point, so getting Faris back up there, 1100 damage with only 3000 HP on this boss, there's not too much more left to go, so just trying to keep everyone alive to make sure we get full EXP for everybody. Don't want anyone to lag behind in levels just yet. And Blaze there, a nasty ability it uses that hits everybody, and Lena hitting for another 1100, and the boss is just done. Potency of that Spellblade attack there with two-handed, and we'll see a lot more Spellblade as we go through the game now that we've got the Mystic Knight. Made sure to get the two-handed first before switching over to Mystic Knight with Lena, because we wanted to take advantage of that severe damage boost from, you know, two-handing those swords. So Queen Karnak passes out, and the engine blows up. And she mentioned she was being controlled by a dark evil spirit. The crystal is, you know, not just what's going on, but the evil that was possessing her is trying to destroy the crystals for some reason. Maybe something to do with the revival that she mentioned, so Heading up through this tunnel here, we get to where the fire crystal is. It's a bit of a trek, and there it is. A couple of these tubes here. There's a bit of a machine based underneath it, which these tubes use to connect to the fire crystal, and the werewolf just showed up, so he's happy to see the crystal still intact, and spots us all here, and he knows Galuf. And Avros says we won't let him touch the crystal, and he lets us know he's not our enemy, but we're not so sure about that, and Galuf seriously can't remember this werewolf, but he knows Galuf, so... Galuf experiencing trouble with his amnesia, no idea who he is still, so... this random soldier comes in and walks up to this green switch on the wall and flicks it, and the wolf reacts very viscerally there, saying it'll send too much power through the crystal and cause it to break, but it looks like he's also possessed if that's what that green energy is around him, and disappears entirely. So... party runs around the back to see what they can do, and Avros lets us know the switch is broken, which means there's nothing we can do to stop the machine from reconnecting to the fire crystal and trying to drain its energy. And two of the pipes there have already connected, and the one that we came through is now trying to connect up as well, and the wolf decides to stand in the way and hold it from coming through, and tells Galuf that we need to run, and there's one crystal left, the Earth Crystal, but Sid didn't mention anything about amplifying the power of that one earlier, so maybe no one knows where it is, or maybe no one asked him to amplify it. We just need to find out what's going on with that Earth Crystal, and we'll see that coming up soon. So, Avros does a 180 there on the werewolf, and is sad to see him put himself in harm's way, and the party tries to escape, only to fall through a crack of the floor as more fire emerges. And the werewolf lets us know that Galuf is the only hope of actually saving everything, so maybe Galuf's more important than we think. I guess we don't know because of his amnesia, and he doesn't know either how important he is, but he might be more relevant to this overall story than it initially seemed. So the party falls into this basement area here, and lots of fire still around in the area. This is... just seems to be the trademark of the fire crystal. You could see it if you go into Karnak Castle earlier, but the fire goes away, and the crystal has shattered. We don't know, as he says, lost its power. So we run back to see what's happened, and we see the crystal is gone. Werewolf's gone too, and Avros says probably trapped in the fire and had no way of getting out. So Lena says we gotta hurry. The castle is being held together by the power of the fire crystal, so that's a problem. Now that the fire crystal's gone, maybe the castle is just going to explode, and this very urgent music hits, and we get a lovely message here saying there's 10 minutes left before the castle detonates. So here we go with the castle escape sequence. As you can see in this section, there's a lovely little counter in the bottom right hand corner that's ticking down the 10 minutes we have to get out of here, and this is actually pretty stressful to do, especially if you want to get everything on the way through the castle. So you can see that there's 2,000 gold in that chest, a bunch of chests there that are actually closed, and this is why it gets really stressful. There's a lot of monster attacks in these chests, and they can be random encounters based on what sort of chest it is you're opening. So this one has two of these Karnak dogs and a sorcerer, which is the most common encounter for this this chest, but it can have much worse encounters, which we'll see a bit later on. When some of those happen, I'll point out some of them. But we managed to deal with this encounter, and mashing through the text there, we get an elixir, which is one of the better items in the game. Fully restores HP and mana, regardless of what you've got. And yeah, we're going to try and get absolutely every item in this run-through. It did take me a few attempts, we'll cover that at the end. Gygus here, one of the worst monsters you can run into, but this is a fixed spawn for this chest. He casts arrow there on everybody, and loves to do that a bunch and sort of deal a little bit of chip damage to everyone's HP. And yeah, we're just kind of trying to deal with these encounters as they come and get these rare items out of these chests. A lot of these you can't get until later. Drops a Goliath tonic and a shuriken, which we don't have anything that can use the shuriken yet, but we'll cover that in a later episode when we get it. And another guy, I guess, fixed spawn in this chest as well. So a lot of this comes down to effective maintenance of what your party actually does. So these Gyguses, you can try and steal elixirs from them and waste time trying to do that, as well as getting other elixirs from chests and other things. That chest has a ribbon in it, which is one of the best pieces of armor in the game, so definitely worth getting that one. But yeah, so a lot of this is time maintenance. If you want to get every chest, you have to be efficient. There's another thing at the end of this battle sequence we're going to try and get as well, which we did get in the run. So we'll cover that off when we get to it. But to get absolutely everything, you have to be very precise, very efficient, get through these fights as quickly as possible, and pick up everything you possibly can. So 2,000 gil on that unguarded chest. This is the rare spawn. We actually got a Gygas out of this one, which is not the best, but make the best out of a bad situation, and just deal with the Gygases as they come. Try and use as much damage as you possibly can, but also don't exhaust your mana, as there's no very effective way of getting it back this early. So if you need healing spells later, or you need highly damaging spells later, you don't want to not have that mana when you need it. So, an elixir in that chest, another monster attack here. This one is a definite Gygas. So, the preemptive attack there gave me an opportunity to use Steel and get an elixir from this one, as the preemptive attack will give everybody a round of combat with their ATB bars basically filling up immediately at the start of combat before the enemy gets a chance to act. So that gives me a nice, easy fight here before the Gygas even gets a chance to do anything. And get another elixir out of the chest after stealing one from that Gygas. So trying to get a few elixirs here because they are so handy later on in the game because of how much health and mana they can restore. And running across the battlements down into this little hidden area here that you couldn't get to earlier in Karnak Castle due to the area being on fire. And got the better fight here for this one. I mean, it's a Gygas, but the other fight has a Gygas and multiple other units in it. So actually pretty happy to get this one in this attempt. A couple of the previous attempts did get the ultimate fight, and this ate a lot of time to get through. So conveniently getting through this one nice and quickly, and yeah, less than 7 minutes left on the clock. Getting that Elven Mantle there, which is an accessory that when it's equipped to a character in their accessory slot, gives them a 30% dodge chance on all melee attacks before taking into account any other armor or anything like that. So they can just straight up just completely avoid attacks. It's an incredibly useful piece of gear to get in this section, because there's not too many Elven Mantles in the early part of this game. There's one other one we'll be going and picking up in a later episode in another quite annoying sequence. So making sure we pick up all these chests. Lots of monster attacks, so like I said, stealing elixirs there from the Gygas when you get the chance, and just dealing with the combats as they come. But yeah, there's the two battlement sections. We've already done one. This is the entrance to the other battlement section, and then there's the way out through the entrance. There's a few more chests there that we'll be grabbing, and then we'll head out to a boss encounter at the end of this section. So annoyingly enough, this section does have a boss encounter at the end of it, which really can eat into your time and give you a very difficult chance of actually getting through this if you don't have too much time left on the clock when you get to that boss encounter. There is a optional thing you can do in that, which we will be doing in this one, to give you something to going forward with the game that's very useful to have. So that does also require you to spend a bit of time in that boss encounter just waiting to see if you can pull something off. And Avros stealing a Mage Masher there from the Sorcerer, a very potent dagger that we won't get access to until later on in the game, that has the Silence spell tied into the weapon by default, so when you attack with it there's a chance that it will cast Silence on the target, preventing it from casting any spells for the duration of that combat, and they'll come in handy much later on. And getting all the chests there, heading up onto the other battlement, and heading to pick up the other major piece of gear that we really want to get in this section. So all the way down to the bottom of the battlement again, similar to the other side, and a monster attack in this one. And this is the worst encounter I was talking about. So a Gygas, a Sorcerer, and a Karnak decided to be a bit cute there and steal that elixir. Probably not the best idea, but I felt with over 5 minutes left this far through the castle and not too much more left to go before the final encounter that I would take the risk. An extra elixir seemed worth it, and it did pay off in this run. A couple of the previous ones, stealing for extra elixirs really didn't pay off because Avros wasn't dealing damage for those fights. So getting a Mage Masher there as well. Man, I was just really taking some pretty big risks with this this run through. I guess I was just getting a bit frustrated with not coming out with any decent gear here. So there is a rare steal on those sorcerers, which is a sort of 1 in 256 chance when you try and do a steal that gives you a much better item. Once you've stolen from them once, it's unlikely that you'll have a chance to steal that rare item from them, so trying to get that from some of these mages here, but also trying to pick up those Mage Mashers as well. The item we just got there, the Mangesh, is a knife item that gives the wielder the chance to block with the knife as if it was a shield, so it can be given to thieves or red mages and other stuff like that that'll actually give them a block chance. This is one of the other fights in here, so a sergeant and 3 of the dogs. The sergeant itself doesn't really do anything except command the dogs to attack, so once the dogs are dead you can just wait, and the sergeant will say, "Can't you take a hint, eat this," which is the trigger to make the dogs attack, and we'll just leave. So these are the last 2 chests, a couple of sorcerers in this one, and managed to snag the rare steal here right at the end, getting the Gaia gear, which buffs all elemental attacks from the wearer, so super useful for anyone using elemental magic, and really, really good on Galuf at this point as the white mage, so very lucky to have actually gotten that steal there, and very happy that actually happened on this attempt. So got myself a Sooner out of that chest, which is a level 4 white magic spell, the only level 4 white magic spell we have access to at this point that cures all status ailments rather than needing to use items or use a spell like poison to get rid of poison and other stuff like that. So a Sooner, incredibly useful. So another sergeant here with 3 dogs, and once you kill the dogs, it turns out he's not an ordinary soldier, and we want to see his true identity, and his true identity is Iron Claw. 900 HP, incredible amount of defense there with 20. Weak to nothing, so there's not really much you can do to take advantage of his low magic weakness, and he's immune to nothing and has no type, because he's a weird claw with legs, but that incredible physical defense that he has means that he is very, very difficult to get rid of, so we'll steal a Hero Cocktail there from him. Still don't have the class that can take advantage of those, but we're going to do a little bit of damage here to get his health down, running low on time, and that was the ability we were waiting for in this fight. Conveniently, he used it really early, hitting Avros, who's actually the one with learning there with the Death Claw, because that's a blue magic spell we can learn, and saved the effort of actually needing to wait in this fight. So we're just gonna lay into the Iron Claw, hope he doesn't kill Avros here because then we'll need to revive him. He's on incredibly low health with only that 4 health after being hit by Death Claw, and we'll deal with the Iron Claw and make it out with 2 minutes 44 to spare, and 4 failed attempts before that one. Pretty frustrating little section there of the game, but as long as you know what you're doing and how to get through all those encounters and have a decent party setup, it's not so bad. Having a Thief for that makes it a hell of a lot better because of the Vigilance ability, so you can't get hit by back attacks, meaning you're not swapping rows in early rounds of combat to deal with the weakness of your melee fighters not hitting as hard. So made it through the castle, learnt Deathclaw there, and we'll cover that when we get around to using it on the Blue Mage, but picked up the Beastmaster job, and the Geomancer, which is very good with the Gaia gear we got before, and the last one we get is the Ninja, so there we go, something to use those Shuriken we picked up. And only 3 jobs from that crystal, which is a bit weird considering we've gotten 5 from all the previous ones, but that's it for the fire-powered ship and the Karnak escape sequence and for this episode. So thank you all for watching, and we'll cover the new jobs in the next episode.